The exact moment your romance died wasn't during a screaming match. It didn't happen over a bitter betrayal, a massive lie, or a packed suitcase waiting by the front door. It happened in complete silence, at 3 in the morning, in the dark hallway of your own home. Think back to the photographs sitting on your mantle right now. The radiant, joyful wedding pictures. The two of you looking at each other like you had unlocked the absolute secret to the universe. You made a promise to build a life together. You firmly believed that having a child would be the ultimate culmination of that love, the final, perfect brick in the beautiful foundation you spent years laying down. Now, look at the reality. You are standing in that dark hallway. One of you is holding a crying infant, eyes glazed over with a specific, hollow type of exhaustion that goes straight to the bone. The other is shuffling back to bed, desperate to squeeze out 45 minutes of fragmented sleep before the alarm goes off. You pass each other in the narrow space. You don't speak. You don't touch. You actively avoid making eye contact. Because making eye contact would mean acknowledging the terrifying void that has opened up between you. It would mean risking a fight you are both too deeply tired to finish. You were promised that a baby would bring you closer together. The culture sold you a vision of matching pajamas, peaceful Sunday mornings, and perfectly curated family milestones. But nobody warned you about the sheer volume of invisible tasks. The feeding schedules, the endless laundry, the pediatrician appointments, and the agonizing sleep regressions. The romance wasn't violently murdered, it was suffocated under a mountain of specialized, endless logistics. You aren't lovers anymore. You are shift workers. You are completely depleted co-managers of a chaotic, hyper-demanding household. And worst of all, you are roommates. This is the great, unspoken terror of modern parenting. It is a secret so shameful that nobody dares to say it out loud at baby showers or post about it on social media. You look at the person you chose to walk through fire with, and instead of passion, all you feel is a cold, heavy resentment. You track every minute they sleep, every chore they miss, every moment of free time they accidentally steal. You love your child with a ferocity that defies all logic, but in the quiet, lonely hours of the night, a dark thought creeps into your mind. You wonder if having this baby has permanently ruined your marriage. You wonder if you will ever recognize the person sleeping next to you again, or if this suffocating, logistical grind is simply all there is left. You are drowning in guilt because you wanted this family so badly. You planned for it. You celebrated it. Yet here you are, isolated in the very home you built to house your happiness, convinced that you and your partner have fundamentally failed a test that everyone else seems to be passing. But what if everything you are feeling right now is entirely predictable? What if this profound disconnect is not a sign that your relationship is doomed, but a perfectly engineered feature of the modern family unit? But how does the ultimate act of love, bringing a new life into the world, turn the two people who loved each other most into silent strangers passing in the dark? And more importantly, is the damage permanent? The shift doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in through the back door, disguised as absolute necessity. In the first few weeks, you operate on pure adrenaline. You are a unified team surviving the trenches, high on the sheer miracle of your new reality. But as the adrenaline finally fades and the weeks endlessly bleed into months, the crushing volume of survival mechanics takes over. Romance inherently requires space. It requires spontaneity, energy, and a mind completely free from immediate peril. But an infant is an absolute dictator of your time. Suddenly, every single waking second of your existence is spoken for. You abruptly stop being two independent adults sharing a beautiful life and violently transform into two highly stressed employees desperately trying to keep a tiny, irrational CEO alive. And in this new, rigid corporate structure of your home, something incredibly toxic begins to take shape. Let's call it the invisible ledger. Before the baby, your relationship was an open, flowing exchange of affection. Now, without even realizing it, you have started keeping score. A silent, deeply bitter running tally forms in the back of your exhausted mind. Who actually got up at 2 in the morning? Who dealt with the explosive blowout at dawn? Who is technically allowed to sleep in on Saturday, and who gets to take a 20-minute shower without feeling a suffocating wave of guilt? You fundamentally stop viewing each other as partners in love and start viewing each other as adversaries competing for the rarest commodities on earth, rest and autonomy. This is exactly where the resentment violently takes root. It thrives in the staggering weight of the invisible mental load. One of you, inevitably, becomes the default parent. You are the one who knows, down to the exact millimeter, how the sleep sack needs to be zipped. You know when the pediatrician needs to be called, when the next size up in clothes must be ordered, and exactly which specific pitch of a cry means hunger versus pain. The other partner quickly becomes the helper, waiting for instructions, executing physical tasks, but totally blind to the massive, invisible web of mental planning required to keep the household from collapsing. The helper feels constantly micromanaged and criticized, unable to do a single thing exactly right. The default parent feels completely abandoned, drowning under the crushing, lonely responsibility of managing an entire human life. You are both working far past the point of physical exhaustion, yet you both firmly believe you are carrying the heavier burden. Every forgotten chore feels like a deliberate, personal attack. Every heavy sigh from your partner feels like a direct indictment of your parenting. The empty space between you fills with a dark, unspoken dialogue. If you really loved me, you would notice how tired I am. If you really cared, you would just do it without me having to ask, ****. You are starving for connection, but you are far too defensive to actually ask for it. The intimacy isn't just gone, it has been weaponized. You sit together on the exact same couch at the end of the night, staring at your glowing phones, separated by a million miles of unsaid words. You are officially roommates, bound together by a mortgage, a shared calendar, and a glowing baby monitor. You might think 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep is the ultimate cure for this creeping resentment. But what if the exhaustion slowly destroying your marriage isn't physical at all, but a devastating structural trap that sleep can never fix? Stop looking at your partner as the enemy. Stop interrogating your own heart, wondering where the spark went. The profound disconnect you are experiencing right now is not a symptom of a dying love. It is the exact, predictable result of the first 1,000 days of parenthood. Let's look at the cold, clinical reality of human biology. From the moment of conception through the first 2 years of a child's life, your brains are completely hijacked by a singular, ruthless imperative, keeping a highly vulnerable infant alive. Your nervous system is flooded with cortisol. Your amygdala, the threat detection center of the brain, is constantly on high alert. You are literally operating in a prolonged, unrelenting state of fight or flight. When a human being is in chronic survival mode, the brain aggressively rations its resources. It systematically shuts down all non-essential systems. And biologically speaking, romantic intimacy, spontaneous affection, and sexual desire are entirely non-essential for immediate survival. Your body has forcefully pulled the plug on your romantic life to reroute all available power to the sheer logistics of keeping your child breathing, fed, and safe. You haven't fallen out of love. Your biology has simply put your romance into a medically induced coma. But this biological hijacking is only half the story. The real villain in this narrative is the crushing structural isolation of the modern family unit. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans raised children in deep, interconnected tribes. The burden of childcare, feeding, and nighttime soothing was distributed across grandparents, aunts, siblings, and the broader community. The phrase, "it takes a village," was never meant to be a cute, comforting slogan. It was an absolute, non-negotiable biological requirement for human survival. Now, look at the cruel blueprint of the modern world. We have completely bulldozed the village. We have taken the exhausting, relentless labor of an entire tribe and dropped it squarely onto the shoulders of just 2 people. We expect these 2 isolated people to work full-time jobs, manage a mortgage, cook nutritious meals, maintain a flawless household, and somehow, miraculously, keep the burning fires of a cinematic romance alive. It is a mathematical impossibility. You are trying to operate a massive, 24-hour emergency room with a staff of exactly 2. When a ship is violently taking on water, the crew doesn't pause to light candles and listen to soft music in the captain's quarters. They grab buckets. They bail water. They shout instructions over the deafening noise of the storm. That is what the roommate phase actually is. It is not a failure of your specific relationship. It is two deeply committed people successfully keeping a ship afloat in a storm they were never meant to weather alone. You are not defective. Your marriage is not broken. You are simply reacting perfectly to an impossibly broken system. The profound loss of intimacy you feel is a temporary structural failure, not a permanent romantic one. Taking away the crushing weight of that shame changes everything. It allows you to look across that dark hallway and finally see your partner not as a selfish roommate, but as a fellow survivor in the trenches. Realizing that you aren't failing, that the system itself is just broken, brings a massive sigh of relief. But understanding the trap is not the same thing as escaping it. How do you stop being roommates when the lease on your old romantic life has already expired? To escape the roommate phase, you have to perform a radical act of surrender. You must completely and permanently dismantle the invisible ledger. Right now, you are trapped in a bitter, unspoken race to the bottom. You are endlessly competing over who is more exhausted, whose sacrifices are greater, and whose free time is more violated. But here is the brutal truth about the exhaustion Olympics: even if you win, your prize is just a deeply damaged marriage. You have to accept a new baseline. You are both completely drained. You are both giving absolutely everything you have. The math of a modern family will never divide into a perfectly fair 50-50 split, and continuing to aggressively measure it will only destroy you. So, you burn the scorecard. When you stop viewing your partner as a competitor for rest, you can finally start viewing them as your only ally. But to rebuild that alliance, you have to completely shatter the toxic dynamic of the default parent and the helper. If you are the default parent, carrying the crushing weight of the mental load, you have to do something incredibly difficult. You have to let go of control. You must allow your partner to execute tasks differently than you would. You cannot demand that they take the reins and then ruthlessly critique how they hold them. If they put the baby to sleep in a mismatched outfit, you say nothing. If they load the dishwasher in a way that defies all structural logic, you let it go. You trade micromanaged perfection for peace. If you are the helper, you have to step up and actively take ownership, not just take orders. You can no longer wait for a polite request or a detailed checklist to jump into action. You must look around your own home, identify what needs to be done, and simply do it. You must shoulder a portion of the invisible mental load by anticipating the needs of the household before they become an emergency. You must also separate the cold, hard logistics from the emotional core of your relationship. You need a weekly state of the union. Pick a time on Sunday afternoon, never in bed, and never in the dark, to sit down like the co-managers you currently are. Map out the groceries, the appointments, and the deeply necessary pockets of individual rest. You front-load the survival mechanics so that when the sun goes down, you aren't aggressively negotiating who is washing the bottles while standing over the sink. You strip the household logistics of their emotional weight. And in the moments when the tension spikes anyway, you deploy radical empathy. When your partner snaps at you over something trivial, you don't instantly snap back. You recognize the sheer exhaustion speaking. You look at them and simply say, "I see how hard you are working. I know you are running on empty." Validation is the ultimate antidote to resentment. You've finally burned the scorecard. You've streamlined the logistics, and the bitter arguments over who is more tired have stopped. But there is one final, terrifying step required to resurrect the actual romance, and it requires doing the exact opposite of what every modern parenting book tells you to do. Every modern parenting book, every social media influencer, and every well-meaning relative will tell you the exact same thing. Your child must be the absolute center of your universe. You must sacrifice everything for their development, their happiness, and their peace. But to save your marriage, you have to do something deeply taboo. You have to temporarily dethrone your child. If the foundation of a house cracks, it doesn't matter how beautiful the roof is. The whole structure will eventually collapse. Your marriage is that foundation. And prioritizing that foundation is not an act of selfishness, it is the ultimate act of love for your family. Resurrecting your romance doesn't start with an expensive vacation or a grand, sweeping gesture. It starts in the quiet micro-moments. It starts by aggressively reclaiming your individual identities. Stop calling each other mom and dad when the baby isn't even in the room. Speak each other's actual names. It sounds so incredibly simple, but hearing your own name reminds you that you are still a lover, a partner, a completely separate human being who existed long before this baby arrived. You must carve out time that is fiercely, unapologetically protected from the logistics of parenting. 10 minutes on the couch where you are legally not allowed to discuss the sleep regression, the upcoming pediatrician appointment, or the grocery list. You force the conversation back to yourselves. You touch each other without it being a strictly functional passing of a baby. A hand on the shoulder. A lingering hug in the kitchen. You have to jumpstart the physical connection by intentionally breaking the physical barrier that the roommate phase built around you. You will feel a profound sense of guilt the first time you leave your baby with a sitter to go sit in a quiet restaurant. You will spend the first half of the meal staring blankly at each other, desperately trying to remember how to have a conversation that doesn't involve your child. Lean into that awkwardness. Push through it. You are literally exercising a romantic muscle that has completely atrophied. You might desperately want to go back to the couple you were in that radiant wedding photo. But the absolute truth is, you can never go back. And you shouldn't want to. That couple in the photograph was naive. Their love was beautiful, but it was untested. It was built on the easy, frictionless days of infinite free time and uninterrupted sleep. The love you are building now, the love you are resurrecting from the ashes of the roommate phase, is infinitely stronger. It is a gritty, battle-tested, unbreakable bond forged in the crucible of absolute exhaustion. You have seen each other at your absolute worst, stripped of all vanity and energy, and you are choosing to stay. You are choosing to rebuild. When you finally emerge from the fog of those first 1,000 days, something miraculous happens. The brutal, hyper-specialized logistics begin to ease. The child starts sleeping. You find yourself standing in the exact same hallway where you used to pass each other in bitter silence at 3 in the morning. Except this time, the sun is shining. You stop. You finally look at each other. You have survived the crucible of the first 1,000 days, and the roommate phase is finally behind you. But as the dust settles and you look at the person standing across from you, the only question left to answer is who you will choose to be, now that you are finally meeting in the light.